What up, class? We're finally gonna do this. I'm confident enough in my color grading skills now to show you guys. And I've also recently discovered my new favorite tutorial that I watch often to learn from. And then they also had some things that you can purchase to help elevate your grading, and that's what I'm going to break into. I have found some techniques over the years that have really helped me, some different plugins and things that I use to create the look that I have now. So today we're going to dive into 3 scenes that I've done recently, and we're going to color grade them and just break down how I did it. So let's dive into it. First up is this like red, you can call it horror, but I did it for like a gangster thing. And just to do it, because I've always had this idea of like this red cross type thing. So there's 4 scenes, but I'm not going to break down each one of them. I'm just going to break down my 2 favorite. This one and this one, because I love the reds and just that. And then I love what happened here. So I'm going to do this all in DaVinci Resolve. This color grading tutorial is all done in DaVinci Resolve. You can achieve this in other programs, but I like to use DaVinci Resolve. So if DaVinci Resolve isn't for you, then go ahead and skip past this video. If it is, make sure you lock in and pay attention. So here's my node tree. It's a little wild. So shout out to Mark Bone on YouTube. He had this tutorial I found about color grading in DaVinci Resolve, and it was a really good step-by-step breakdown. And I just love how they had their node tree set up. So I had the money where I could buy their power grade and everything that came with it, because like I said, I like to go back and watch stuff. So all of this has been set up due to them. I will say that, with a couple extra additions that I add and swap out. Do I think you need a complicated node tree like this all the time? No, but we're gonna do this. So here is the final result, and then let's turn it off. There's where we started. There's flat shooting Blackmagic Pixis raw, and I like to describe it as like 32-bit float for video, where if I shoot in the wrong color temperature, I can go back and change it afterwards within the file. So it's super cool. So first off, I always start with noise reduction. You can use the plugin that's over there. That's why I went to that. So first off, I'm going to start with noise reduction. I use the panel. There's a plugin, but I like to stick within the panel. Here you can see I have it at 6. I usually like to jump between 6 and 8-ish. I like to do better. You can do faster, but better just works within my system here. Up next, we're going to do HDR. And right now, we're just kind of correcting the image. All right, so let's dive into it. So up first is this clip we have of me in front of a cross. The first thing that I'm going to do is turn on the main look that I have for this, and that is going to be the MBX NP Power Grade DaVinci Wide Gamut Rec 709 LUT. Boom, you can kind of see it brings it to life there. I'm going to worry about all these other looks afterwards. I just want to get that first one on so I know what I'm working with. Then we're going to turn on the noise reduction, and on this one I like to have the frame set to 3. I do better instead of faster just because of my computer's power. And then I set the luma and chroma to around 6 to 9 sometimes, depending on how much noise my image has, but I also like a little bit of noise, so that's okay. After that, this is going to kind of seem like it contradicts itself, but I'm going to put in one of my favorite plugins. It's called Renoiser. Sean, you just denoised it. Why are you doing that? Well, we're just denoising it to get rid of some of the major noise that we don't like. And then what I like about this plugin from Red Giant and Maxon is that you can choose from different movies. And I like to pick a modern 35, so it's got that renoiser of a modern 35. Then the secret here is to set it to monochrome grain as well, and that really just blends naturally. And it looks like we're shooting on a film camera, and that's like one of my favorite techniques. Up next is the HDR. Here, a lot of people don't really use the HDR wheel, and I think because it scares and intimidates them, but I personally have always used the HDR wheel. I have a hard time listening to people when I think something looks good. And when I mess with that, I was getting a lot more detail control and all of the things that it has listed here, you know, like black, dark, shadows, lights, highlights, and the global. On this one, in pre-production, in shot, set everything how I wanted to, so I don't necessarily need to change anything on that. But the global is what we're going to look at. And you can see here it's set to about a quarter of a stop up from what I originally shot. Just a little bit, just a smidgen, you know, just to bring it out a little bit. So let's go back up even a little bit more than what I had it. Let's go to 25. And you'll notice just a subtle change there, but the overall reds and the shadows are better. Then we're going to turn on the CST, Color Space Transform. This is a big reason that I love Resolve, and I'm sure there's a way you can do this in Premiere, but I've never seen it. Unless they added it now, I believe, but it doesn't matter. So I have this set to what my camera is set to, Gen 4.5. So I have this set to what my camera is set to, Gen 4.5, and Film Gen 5 for the input gamut and color space. Turn that on. Now we really have our image. Usually I will have that on first, but since I was breaking it down this way, I kind of just wanted to do it in order. So now you can really see the definition, and this is what I was shooting when I was shooting, if this makes sense. Like, this is what the monitor looked like when I was shooting. Up next, the white balance, and this is what this tutorial that Mark Bone put out showed me, was the way that you use the curves for your white balance. And there's a couple different things that I may do for a white balance, and I'll show you that in another clip, but this one is the way that I'm doing this white balance. So here you can see how I set my curve. Some people like to do a natural S-curve. For this one specifically, I did not. Make sure you have it on edible splines, because if you don't, it's just going to be a lot different. And I wish I was more detailed to know why, but what it does to the image is just way better, and it doesn't cause this interference that's all jacked up. So I have it set to about here. And what's nice about edible splines is this right here. What you can do, see how it flattens the highlights, or we bring it up. And that's where some of this major magic is coming from. And then I have my blacks resting. It starts here, and I wanted it crunched a little bit more on the sides. And that's where it brings us. And that's kind of where I left it. Primaries, this is what's going to be different than Mark Bone's tutorial. So the way that they do it is fantastic. Pretty much they suggested using printer lights, and there's in the program way to use printer lights, but I have a plugin that makes it easier for me not to have to do it that way. And it's from Mono Labs. They're awesome. Check them out. I'll make sure I link that in the description. So let's turn on the primaries, and you can see what kind of happens here. I like my blacks a little bit more faded, and then you can also control the master light from here, which is cool, like the overall exposure. I'll bring it back down a little bit, and then you can control this as well, and that's how we get it a little bit more muted. And see, this is, I only shot monochrome in this, one color, all red, glowing together. That's the only color that you see, no other light input. So no matter what I do on these, it's gonna just change that red in different tones. And also that's a good way to look at black and white footage. Like, that's the same thing that black and white does. And a good thing to do is, I like to do a secret tip on set, is have a black and white filter, or like a LUT on, to show me how deep some of the reds may be in comparative. And you can also use these with like the vector scopes on your camera and things like that. So many ways to look at this before you bring it into post-production. This plugin has a half scale mode. Just see what it does, brightens it up, but I wanted it a little bit taller. I wanted it a little bit darker, so that's what we did. Change the color space to what you're shooting in, so it makes sense. These shapes are built so that you can create mask within here if you need to. I don't need to, because they're again later on in this setup, so we're going to leave those blank here. This, I really like what they did. They create this natural cyan look in their power grade that makes it feel like a movie. I don't need it here once again, because you're not going to notice anything, because there's literally no cyans to mess with. Now the sub-saturation, I'm going to leave this off and we'll come back to it in a different clip, but this is nice. What pre-hue versus hue does, it allows you to pretty much, as you can see here, mess with these. I had it off because I didn't need to mess with it. I just felt like it really wasn't doing anything for me that I needed, so I left it. Here is where those masks I was talking about, they have it labeled as an in-out, and they've done some different things here with the log grade, custom curves within the power window, and they blur, sharpen, and misted it, which is why I really like this. It creates this nice little filter over the footage, but also encompassing and focusing on the subject. Super cool. And then they have an outer one to help darken the edges a little bit. So that's all done for you within that power grade that you get from Mark Bone. And no, this is not a paid partnership. No, this is not a paid partnership. I just really love this tutorial and it helped me a lot. And I want it to help you guys as much as it helped me. Now, halation, I'm going to leave this on, and this is the halation plugin you get from DaVinci Pro, which is super sick. I don't need it on a ton, but you can see what it's going to do there to the cross, but it's going to get a little wonky, and it's going to do it to all that, and it gives me more of a noir, crow, you know, type vibe, and I don't want it that strong. So we're going to pull back down, leave that right where it's at. Here's where that main LUT is that we first turned on when we got started, and now we're going to go through all these trees. This is post-hue versus hue thing, whatever. I'm going to leave it as is, like I already had it set, but we can then go through and break down. Here you can see the minor adjustments that it did. And it doesn't do a lot, it just does an extra little bit for me that I felt was okay. And what I also, it doesn't do a lot, but it doesn't need to. It's just the extra little going on that I feel like helps my image. See how it bumps the whites out, the yellows out of that cross a bit. That's what it's doing for me. Now we're going to pull up the black levels. Here we're going to go back to the curve. This was also a new thing I learned that I had not done before that has actually been helping my stuff look more cinematic. So here we go back to the normal curve, and you're only, with your edible spline still on, you're still just keeping this here. And I kind of try to follow the major bump in the histogram. And then I adjust this, you know, what you want. We could get real dark with it. I wanted it just to feel like it was putting off this powerful glow, so I really lifted those shadows back there. Now, this post look, I have another video that I talk about this plugin, so I won't dive into it, but this is one of my favorite free plugins to use. It's a DCTL. I can't remember who it's from, so I have to look it up, but it's called Tetra. And it's called Tetra. And why it's so awesome is it is a color breakdown that helps you kind of control everything, kind of like selective color in Photoshop. I will always come down here first and mess with these like whites. You see what it's doing to the cross. We're going to bring that back down to 0. It's making the cross very yellow. I don't really want that. So on the blues just a little bit, and then we can pull there. Now it's a little less yellow without affecting the whole overall image. Why this is so good is, like I said, you can do, I want to brighten that red right there and make it even a bigger glow. That helps right there. You can make it yellow if you wanted to. You know, that's not the point of what I'm doing. Just to show you guys what you can really do with this plugin is incredible. And it's free. It's completely free. Okay, now the last thing that's super cool about this setup that they give you is the pastel and all these possible looks. And what it also showed me is a different way to combine them. And I don't use this, I use this node tree every time I color now, but I don't necessarily use all the same colors and or looks. I interchange them, but I like how it shows you how to mix them. I left it the same for this so that you guys could then go to theirs and compare it and see how it's used, you know, but like I said, it's super easy if you wanted to go to different looks here in the page and swap it out, and they make it easy for you. Very user friendly. As I'm looking at this, I need to bring these back down, actually. This is too blue, pink. See what that's doing? So, is it this? Okay. A little better. There we go. It's right there. Okay, we'll deal with that. I can keep going forever, obviously. I think the yellow actually probably matches a little bit more than what I'm thinking the blue is. I just don't like it discussing yellow too much, but yellow and red obviously go together. Moving on. Anyways, so I'll leave them the same. So they give you them all. You import them into your program. I'm not going to break that down. First one is this pastel look, and they have all these settings set for you so that it gives you, that you can go in there and change, obviously. I just have left most of them so that you guys can see in comparison how it looks on my footage. You got this pastel look that makes it very filmic. Mixing it with these moody blue keys. Then you put in these earthy tones. I will not use this, but that's what it looks like. You see how it just makes it more purple than what I want. So we're going to take that off, and I may not even use this Fuji, but just so you can see it. Makes it just that very purple, and it's just really messing with my image. But I like this right here. This is solid. So we're going to move on. And the last little bit in this power grade is the final bit. So you got sharpness, just to toughen it up a little bit. And then a glow, because I like to add a glow, and I personally added then a light ray because that's what I needed to do to the image to give it some more life. And it just, DaVinci's plugins are getting unreal, and just the light rays here are incredible. I love it. So that's what we did there. And then glow to make it pop, pop. I could actually probably bring that down a smidgen. Boom. Here we're going back to Maxon for that grain. DaVinci has its own grain as well, but I like to use Maxons. I think it's just better and more natural. And they have better controls with it and more options. And then you can turn down the grain exposure as well as the saturation just within the grain, which is super sick. And then they have the opacity, which, geez, what are we doing here? But I'll just add just subtly a little bit. And then the last part, you're probably like, what do you got there? They have this film look creator, but I don't ever use it in DaVinci Resolve. They put it out, and it's a super helpful tool that could compete with like Dehancer and some things like that, I think. But to me, I always just leave it as clean, and I use it for extra lines, which you can't see it because I shot with crop on, but some of these are shot in different crops just because of the tight space I have. So it would add like another crop there. And you can tell it added a little extra thing on top of it. So we're not going to use it on this one, but that's what that image looks like. Let's move on to the next one. This one's from a recent short film I put out on my YouTube, which you can also check out. I'll link, called The Family Plan. And it's a gangster dramedy comedy type thing. Anyway, so I picked this shot because it's an outside natural shot. I had a giant silk over the top so that the sun coming through didn't affect me, and then I had a light pushing back here to replicate the sun because I couldn't control the sun's movement, and I'm not an actor, and it takes me forever sometimes. So I'm not going to then break through everything on this one, but we used a very similar setup. So noise reduction, the HDR, color space, transform, this is all the same camera. The white balance, here I'll show you the difference in that white balance. So this is once again the curve. Okay, so another white balance, I'm going to leave that because it's got the image where it's at. Another one a lot of people don't talk about that I personally love is called chromatic adaptation. And I've only seen this in Resolve. Switch it to color temperature, color temperature. I will say that I've seen this used in I've used it on like my Sony camera, and it kind of makes it dirtier and it has like those fractions or interference that just doesn't look good, so be mindful of that. But I haven't ever noticed an issue on this. So here it just automatically sets it to 65, and if I remember correctly, I think I was at like 7,000, but just so you know, this is where it's at. So when you start changing it, it changes the white balance in a more natural, instead of just like pulling on, you know, said wheel. Okay. So take that off. Let's say if we just did it how a lot of people do it, which is whatever. Go to the gain. And let's pull it back. Yucky. Similar. Very similar, actually. It just seems a little bit more orange, like unnatural orange to me, you know, versus like this is the color temperature orange. And then I just like the control you have between the two. And I won't lie to you, don't know what that means, and I should look into it. Illuminate a type, no idea. But it then allows you to kind of, what? That's tight. And that brought me back to what I originally shot. So like I said, I use that in pickles and in quick edits sometimes. But yeah, use that. See, that's bringing it back to the same. Isn't that crazy? So I have all those same things on here for this one, except I didn't use the Moody because that's would have just caused these weird pinks. I didn't like it. And this, I won't lie to you, when I shot this, that I had just bought in this power grade and stuff too, so I was having fun using just what it looks like. On my next clip, it'll be a lot different. One more thing I want to show you on this one that's different is I also use at times from Monolabs like a final touch thing that has all these settings here, and I like that it also has tonal compression to flatten it if I wanted to go for that type of look. And it's just got easy controls for contrast that don't, like, contrast messes it up a little bit where it's at in the image right now, but this is a plugin that you could genuinely use just like by itself, and I think it would get you there for a final product. I just like all the choices and techniques. It's got all these different controls that have just helped me a ton. In the blacks, like I said, I want them more crunched than this one. Individual color control is really cool. You can see it affecting my skin tone and the yellows in the background. Jump to the reds, it pulls it out nicely. I like cyan control. That's why you see a lot of cyan in my images. It's got deep density, which is pretty sick. Desaturated highlights, and even has this 2-strip process, which I think they recently added a plugin like that. And then bleach bypass to get some really dark stuff, which is fun. So this is another one I love to use. And then as well, I forgot to mention this earlier, make sure that when you're switching, which one is it? When you're doing some of these things, like I believe it's this for, yep, this, the sub saturation. You have to hit color space and make sure it's on HSV. And I've been doing this before I found this power grade, but I even did like a little short for it. And then you got to make sure that you go down to gain and gain only, otherwise it's going to get wonky. But this is the best way to do saturation. You see how it naturally upped that orange for me, and that's what that's focusing on. It naturally upped everything, and then you could go in and control that orange. Like, I'm like, okay, I like where the saturation's at, but I need to go change those oranges. So let's say I want to pull back on that. We're kind of getting there. We're getting pretty yellow now. Let's do this. Let's go down. White there is good. Can we bring it back? Is it just me tugging? There's a yellow. I knew there was yellow. There we go. I was like, I know there's yellow. And then, you know, you kept your saturation without ruining your image. And that's why I love this. And that's how we got this one. So let's move on to the final image. This was shot on a Sony this time, A7 IV, and not the Blackmagic. So things will be a little bit different because they just have different color sciences and color depth. So for this one, the color space transform is S-Gamma Cinema and S-Log3, but then I convert it to DaVinci Y because I got to match my cameras a lot. Once again, then I did the same process with the white balance and everything like that to get this image. And it's just me sitting there. Used all of the same LUTs on this one, but on this time I'll say that I used all of the looks to achieve this muted tone. You know, and that this is literally not... Let me make a duplicate real quick to show you just like it did not look like this. This is a major change that I did just because I really wanted to mess with the image, and I don't have as much control like I do see in with my Blackmagic, because it's just MP4s that I'm shooting with. I'm not shooting on ProRes or even like the metadata that allows you to do that. So let me pick some older ones that power grades that I have that aren't changing anything. And these are some custom ones that I've done. That's another kid's, but yeah. Okay, so here's one of mine that I made for Devil's music video with like my own. See, that tree is way different. But it's not bad. Definitely not bad, but this is what I was doing before. Once again, here's that color. Like I was telling you, you can kind of see there, and what's nice about it is I think I was shooting like 4,000, so I've been really in this 4,000 zone lately. And then, you're close, it must have been 42. Or nope, it's 37. Close, okay. Just a lot different, right? Compared to this. You know, obviously it depends on the mood that you're going for, but it shows a lot more, and the printer lights, we can even just go down to that, and at least it's going to make it moodier, but the control is just going to be different. I got to do a lot more work. So that's how it turns out. To me, it's just night and day better. I could probably lighten off that mask, but it is what it is. So, yeah. So to recap, when you're looking at your node tree, you should look at it in 3 setups. That's what I've learned the most. Your first setup, after you get your CST setup and the look that you're going for, like just that one Rec 709 look, start with correction. And that's going to be here in this first, before, like, you know, all this stuff is correction. All this stuff is correction. I wish, if you really wanted to get technical, I think it'd mess everything up, so I'm not going to compound it. But everything above here is correction to me. And then we're going to move, like, halation is obviously more of an effect, but it's before the LUT because I think it affects the image a lot differently. Everything after that is the grade. So let's consider this the grade, and then this is your final touch-ups in 3 parts. That's how I look at it. That's how I look at my grading. I know there's a lot of things wrong there, and I didn't even necessarily go into a lot of detail on each plugin. And if that's something like that you guys want, or if you want every node broke down, I can definitely do like an hour-long video. But for this one, this is just a short run through. If that's something you're looking for, comment and I'll get going on that. I didn't break down waveforms. I didn't dive into any of that stuff. I just wanted to show you how I color grade my images quickly. And shout out to Mark Brown for teaching me a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, that's it today, class. Finally did a color grading one. If you're into this, please make sure you like, comment, and follow for more.